Alright, we'll say good morning. Let's begin. So today's daf is Kuf Tes Vav 115. Beautiful daf ahead of us today. We are picking up on Kuf Tes Vav and Dalet 115a, and we are picking up 3 lines down from the top of 115a. So the Gemara says, so we'll say we're now going to bring a Gemara to support the statement of Rav Chilkiah bar Rav Tuvi. So remember again, Rav Chilkiah bar Rav Tuvi said in yesterday's daf, he said that an asham that is mechusar zman, right? An asham that is premature, we'll call it premature asham, wrong timing asham, that is brought bachutz outside of the Beis HaMikdash, is not chayiv when it's ultimately brought lishmo. But if it's brought shalo lishmo, then ultimately again it will be chayiv. So it says the Gemara, so let's bring a proof to Rabbi Chilkiah. So Yachol Shani Motzi Af Olas Mechusar Zman Bebailim. So we'll say I might have thought that I would also exclude from liability the case of an Ola that is Mechusar Zman Bebailim, which we'll say means an Ola that is brought in the wrong Zman, but not because of the wrong Zman of the Karban, but rather again the wrong Zman of the Bailim. In other words, the Bailim are bringing it when they have time that it's premature for them. Va'asham Nazir Va'asham Etzorah. Similarly, again, a Asham Nazir and a Asham Etzorah that ultimately, again, are also brought Mechusar Zman. Take a look at Rashi, third line down from the top. Yochel Shani Motzi, Me'al Pesach, so we'll say based on the pasuk of Al Pesach, Mo'amoid, I'm excluding it from liability. Shalo Yischayev Bachutz Al Olas Mechusar Zman B'Bailim. That I say ultimately, again, that I shouldn't be Chayev Bachutz when I bring in Olas Mechusar Zman B'Bailim. Could go and Shal Yoledes U'Metzorah, so I might have thought that if I go ahead and I bring an Olas Mechusar Zman B'Bailim, so Rashi's example of that is like a Yoledes or a Metzorah or an Asham Nazir, Asham Metzorah, which are brought Mechusar Zman B'Bailim, and I bring it B'chutz, I would have thought that I should be exempt from liability for that. Why? Because they cannot be brought Bifnim. Talmud Lomar Shar Mikol Makom, Kesev Mikol Makom, Eis Mikol Makom. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says Shar, Kesev, O Eis, and therefore again, we'll say says it in an unqualified way, in a way that anyone, if you shecht any of these animals outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you will be chayiv. Sounds like liability even in these cases. Vilu chatos shaira, but yet interestingly enough, chatos is excluded from this pasuk. So I'm asking, what are we talking about over here? Ilema bismano. So we'll say if we're talking about the bismano in the right time, my irya asham, then ultimately again, why are we mentioning asham? Afilu chatos nami, even chatos, I will say ultimately again, we should exclude elo shelo bismano. Rather, we must be talking about what? Shelo bismano. Ultimately again, not in the right time. Ubimai, and I will say, so what's the case? Ilema lishmo. If we want to say that it's being offered up lishmo, right, for the right intentions, we'll say kuf tes vav amud aleph, about 8 lines down from the top. Ilema lishmo asham amai chayiv. So we'll say if it's lishmo, then ultimately again, why would the asham be chayiv? Elalav shelo lishmo. Rather, you have to be talking about a situation, ultimately again, where it's being offered up shelo lishmo. To which the Gemara says no. Li'olam bizmano v'shelo lishmo. We'll say rather, what's the case we're talking about over here? We're talking about the carbon is being offered up in the right time, but ultimately again shelo lishmo, not for the right intentions. But Rabbi Eliezer he da'amar makshinan asham lechatos. And I will say effective view of Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that we compare an asham to a chatos. Vitana tafal v'huadin ikar. And the Tana will say is first teaching the secondary case, and through that is going to be teaching us the primary case as well. So Tashma, so we'll say the Gemara goes weiter. Yachol shani marbe olas mechusar zman bigufa, the chatas bein begufa bein bebailim. I might have thought ultimately the pasuk is coming to include, in the case of liability for shchutei chutz, an ola that I will say is mechusar zman bigufa, which means that the carbon itself is premature, or chatos bein begufa bein bebailim, or I will say al chatos that is mechusar zman, either because of itself or ultimately because of the owners. Talmud lomar vel pesach o amoid. Therefore, the pasuk says vel pesach o amoid, which teaches us what? Kol she'in lo roi lavo bepesach o amoid in chayav alehen. Anything I will say that is not fit ultimately to be brought to the entrance of the Oamoid, one is not chayiv for ve'ilu asham shaira. But interestingly enough, asham is left off this list. So my asking on what's the case? If you want to say it's being brought for the right intentions, Asham Nami Liftere, then Asham should also be exempt. Rather, you have to say that it's talking about what kind of case. So we'll say where it's being offered up Shalol Lishmo, to which the Gemara says no. The Olam Shalol Lishmo. In reality, this is being offered up Shalol Lishmo. For Rabbi Eliezer, and this reflects the view of Rabbi Eliezer, who holds the Makish Asham Lechatos, who compares the case of Asham to the case of Chatos. So Tana Iker v'Kol Shekein Tafel. And what's happening over here? We're first stating the primary case, and then going on from there to focus on the secondary case. So Tashma, the Gemara teaches weiter, Dichi Asa Rav Dimi, Amar Tana Debei Rabbi Levi. When Rav Dimi came along, he taught in the name of Rabbi Levi. Yachol Shani Motzi Af Olas. We'll say first wide line on Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph. Yachol Shani Motzi Af Olas Muchusar Zman Bebailim. I might have thought that I would also exclude from liability the case of what I will say Olas Muchusar Zman Bebailim, which means an Ola that is brought by the Bailim, but again it's brought prematurely by the Bailim. It's too early for the Bailim's obligation. To which the Gemara says, Asham Nazir va'Asham Mitzora minayin. How do I know about the case of Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzora? To which the Gemara says, V'nasev lahu Talmuda l'chiyuva. And the Gemara goes ahead and brings down that there is liability in this case. V'lo yidana maihi. And I don't know what the case is. My Talmuda. Where is this being learned out from? Ravina. So Ravina says, Shar mikamakom, Kesev mikamakom, Eiz mikamakom. So what's Ravina says we're coming through an after from the fact that the pasuk says ish mi beis Yisrael asher yishchat shar o kesev o iz b'machane o asher yushchat michutz lamachane. So we'll say the fact that it uses generic terms as shar o kesev o iz, the Pashtus is coming to include all of these cases for liability for shchutei chutz. To which the Gemara says, so the Gemara says shar mikal makom kesev mikal makom iz mikal makom. So the Gemara says, "My high rumya." So I don't understand what's the stira over here. What's the contradiction? Kida amrit. Is the resolution not as we stated before? Rav Nachman mishum dirami detana deber Rabbi Levi adetani Levi asham nazir va asham etzor shachtan shelo lishman ksherin v'lo alu lebailim l'shum chova. They both say, as Levi said before, that's what if you have an asham nazir, an asham tzora, asham etzor, excuse me. That were shechted shelo lishman. They will say that were shechted not for the right intentions. So what's the halacha? Ksherin, the carbon itself is still kosher, but v'lo alu lebailim l'shem chova. They will say they do not satisfy the obligation of the owner. Shachtan mechusar zman bebailim. Oh, say, but however, if they were shechted mechusar zman bebailim, which I will say means they were shechted ultimately again in a way where it's premature for the owners themselves, Osha hayu b'nei shtei shanim v'shachtan, or Rabbi said they were aged out. What's the halacha? You shachted them psulin. Ultimately, again, the carbon is possible. Or the carbon is possible, we'll say in totality. Not only does it not satisfy the owner's obligation, but ultimately, again, it's not even a kosher carbon. Umeshani Rav Dimi lo kasher. Rav Dimi says it's not a contradiction. How so? Kan lishmo, kan shalo lishmo. We'll say one case is talking about where the carbon was offered up lishmo, and one was shalo lishmo. Rav Ashi Rami Abraiso, Masnisen Abraiso, Umeshani. Therefore, I will say, based on this, Rav Ashi contrasted the Mishnah with the Braisa, and he explained as follows: Kan lishmo, they kan shalo lishmo. Same idea. I will say, we're not talking about a case where the carbon was offered up lishmo, and one was shalo lishmo. If that's the case, leima tehevet tiyuf to Rav Huna. So does this not pose a or does this not pose a refutation to Rav Huna? Amar l'charav Huna, to which Rav Huna will tell you, hacham askinon. What's the case? Kigon shehifrish shtei ashamos la'achrayis. We'll say, what's the case here? The case here is where he separated out two ashamos la'achrayis. Ultimately, again, for responsibility. So we'll say, this is actually an interesting case. If you look at the last Rashi on the daf, Kigon shehifrish shtei ashamos la'achrayis, Shem Yovera Echad Yiskaper B'Sheni. So we'll say he separated out two Asham offerings. Now, why would he separate out two Asham offerings? We'll say that in the event that one of them gets lost, we've actually spoken about this before, that in the event that one of them gets lost, ultimately, again, he has a replacement carbon on hand. Rashi says, Shem Yovara Echad Yiskar B'Sheni. That if he loses one, he's able to affect kapara with the other. And what happens? V'shachat, I'm reading Rashi, last Rashi on that. V'shachat echad mehem b'chutz, kodim zmano l'shem ola. Now, he shechted one of them outside of the Beis HaMikdash, kodim zmano, before the appropriate time, but l'shem ola. But he shechted l'shem ola. Dahai kivan d'sof l'rayakoi. So we'll say, now remember, really, this animal was destined for pasture. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, the asham shekipru ba'alov roeh. Because we'll say, ultimately, again, an asham whose owners were atoned through another animal, the additional animal, or the leftover animal, the replacement animal, is set out to pasture. The dam of the case of Zevachim, once it develops a mum, it's redeemed, and that money, I will say, is used ultimately, again, for ola offerings to be offered up on the Mizbeach. She ola, the duchtei bifnim, yishachel the gufilos. We'll say, so now watch this case. So what's the case over here? Last line on Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph. Kigon shehifrish shtei ashtamos lachrayis. You separated out two animals that will say for achrayis. Remember, the carbon that I have to bring is an asham. I separated out two animals. Now my intention is not to offer them both up as ashamos. What's my intention? My intention is to offer up one of them as an asham. I just happen to have a second one as a backup in case I lose the first. What happens, Rabosai, when I offer up the first one as the asham? The second one is simply destined to be an ola. But the way it works is it's set out to pasture. Once it develops a mum, it's redeemed, and the money is used ultimately to go ahead and purchase an ola. So shifish de hashamos lachrayus, the chad minayu meikara olu. We'll say the first one of them is always destined to be an ola. One of them, in others, because we'll say I only have an obligation to offer up one asham. So one of them ultimately again is destined to be an asham, to be an ola this entire time. Meikara oli, Amud Beis, we'll say, Kuf Tesav Amud Beis, Kid Rav Huna. Dam Rav Huna, as Rav Huna says, Kid Rav Huna, Amar Rav, Do Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, Asham Shenitak L'Raya, an asham that ultimately, again, was a set out to pasture, V'shachto Stam, and you end up shechting it Stam, Kasher the Ola. Ultimately, again, is fit to be an Ola. Fine. So essentially, that entire Gemara was really brought in an effort to support the view of Rav Chilkiah, who was mentioned on yesterday's daf on Kuf Yud Daled Amud Beis, which was the position that an asham that was mechusr zman, that was offered up bachus, is not chayiv if offered up shelo lishmo, will be chayiv if offered up lishmo. But ultimately, again, the Gemara uses that as a springboard to discuss all of these other cases of lishmo and shelo lishmo as well. Good. So the Gemara goes weiter. Hamal mi basar chata. So let's remember again. Now we come to the next section in the Mishnah. So in this next section, so what the Gemara said was as follows. The Gemara said, the Mishnah said, Hama'ala mi basar chatas, mi basar asha, mi basar kadshe kadashim, mi basar kadshe kalim, mi chmoser. So the Mishnah talked about all of these items that are, if you offer them up outside of the Beis HaMikdash, ultimately, again, you are potter. The Rabbi say, now the common denominator amongst all of the items mentioned over here in this list is that these are items that are not normally offered up outside of the Beis HaMikdash. They're not offered up outside. So because they're not offered up outside, the reason they're not offered up outside, Rabbi says, is because they're normally consumed. In other words, let me say it differently. These are all items that are not normally consumed on the Mizbeach. These are not items that are normally burned on the Mizbeach. They are normally consumed by the Kohanim or by the owners of the sacrifice. Because of that, if you offer them up outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you are not chayav. Which I will say, this goes in line with the general principle that the only time you are chayav for shchutei chutz is when the similar carbon would go ahead and be offered up inside of the Beis HaMikdash. But if the item itself would not be offered up inside of the Beis HaMikdash, then ultimately, again, you're not chayiv for doing it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So we'll say, so this in this entire list, right? For example, the meat of achatos, the meat of an asham, the meat of kadshe kadashim, the meat of kadshim kalim, the leftover of the omer, the shtei halechem, the lechem aponim, the leftover minchas. We'll say all of these items are normally consumed by the kohanim, so they're not offered up on the mizbeach. So if you offer it up outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you will not be chayiv for that offering. Now, based on that, we'll say, let's go. So Kuf Tezvav 115b, 3 lines down from the top. Hama'ala mi basar chatos. So turn Rabbanon. Minayim lema'ala mi basar chatos, umi basar asham, umi basar kadshe kadashim, umi basar kadshim kalim. So we'll say, how do I know that if a person goes in and offers up outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the meat of a chatos, right? Which also, what happens to the meat of the chatos is normally consumed by the kohen, or from the meat of an asham, consumed by the kohen, or from the meat of kadshe kadashim, consumed by the kohen. Basar kachim kal, the meat of kadshe kadashim, consumed by the kohen. Most sarah omer, the leftover, the omer, the shtei halechem, the 2 loaves of shvuas, lechem haponim, the weekly showbread, shiarim minachos, the leftover mincha. And how do I know that if I offered up any of these items outside of the Beis Hamikdash, shepater, that I am pater? I will say Talmud Lomar Ola. The pasuk says Ola ma Ola shihi ru'uya lahala. We'll say just like we'll say the pasuk that it's talking about over here is talking about the case of shchutei chutz. That if a person offers up an Ola, what's the difference? Why an Ola? Ma Ola shihi ru'uya lahala. We'll say just like an Ola is offered up on the mizbeach. Af kol shiru'uya lahala. So too, when am I chayiv for shchutei chutz? I was saying only when I offer something up, which is fit ultimately for the mizbeach. So again, very important halacha. Therefore, if you offer something up on the mizbeach, which is not normally offered up on the mizbeach because it's consumed by the kohanim, but you offer it up outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you will not be chayiv for that act of halal. So we'll say, how do I know that even if someone pours oil into the mincha, va'bolel, or you mix together the oil with the flour, va'poches, or you break up the wafers of the mincha, va'moleach, or you salt the carbon, va'hamenif, or you wave the carbon, va'magish, but usually menif and magish also by mincha, or you bring it closer to the edge of the mizbeach, va'mesader shulchan, or if you arrange the breads, the lechem aponim on the shulchan, va'meitiv esaneros, or it's not a case like where you bring the menorah outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you arrange the candles of the menorah, v'hakometz, or you take a kometz, v'hamekabel, or you do kabbalah blood. B'chutz, if you do any of these items outside of the Beis Hamikdash, how do I know that I'm chayiv? So we'll say, so remember again, in category one, the reason I am pater in all of these cases is why? Is because I'm offering up on the Mizbeach outside of the Beis HaMikdash items that are normally consumed, that are not offered up on the Mizbeach. So I'm pater. I'm pater for shchutei chutz, I'm pater for Allah b'chutz, because once again, remember, the principle is the same principle everywhere, which is, you're only chayiv for doing something b'chutz if the sacrificial service exists bifnim. But if you do something outside, which is a sacrificial service which does not exist inside, then I will not be chayiv. So in all of these cases over here, in all of these cases over here, again, if I'm taking something which is normally consumed in, and I offer it up outside the Beis Hamikdash, I will not be chayiv for that. Case number two, or I should say category number 2 is a little bit different. In category number 2, these are all things which are not consumed, These are all different parts of the avoda. They are different parts of sacrificial service, either by karbanos or by menachos. Yet, if I do them outside of the Beis Hamikdash, I am not chayiv. Why not? Talmud Lomar asher ya'ale ola o zavach. Because the pasuk says, if you will offer up an ola or a zevach, ma ha'alo shi gimar avoda. Both say just like offering up on the mizbeach end of the avoda, af koshu gimar avoda. Both say so. Similarly, again, when you go ahead and you do an avoda b'chutz, you're only chayiv if what? If you do a concluding avoda b'chutz. If you do an intermediary avoda b'chutz, one will not be chayiv for that. Therefore, I will say, if you look in this second category of items, so these are all items where if you pour the oil into the flour, or you mix the oil together with the flour, or you break up the pieces of the wafer of the mincha, or you salt the carbon, or you wave it, or you bring it close to the southwest corner of the mizbeach, or you arrange the bread and the lechem upon him, or you arrange the candles, or the oil, I should say, in the menorah, or you take a kometz, or you do Kabbalah. We'll say these are all intermediary steps in Avodah. They are not concluding steps. So because they are not concluding steps in the Avodah, therefore what? If you do them b'chutz, you will not be chayv. So we'll say we emerge with two important principles, or I should say two qualifications in when you are chayv for doing something b'chutz. When are you chayiv if you do it b'chutz? Either Eirav say. So number one, which is the overarching principle, which is the only time you're chayiv for doing something b'chutz is when? Is if the same avoda exists bifnim. If it doesn't exist bifnim, then you are not chayiv for doing that b'chutz. So for example, if I take the meat of achatos and I burn it on an altar outside of the Beis HaMikdash, I am not chayiv for doing avoda b'chutz. Why? Because chatos meat is not burned inside of the Beis HaMikdash, it is consumed by the Kohanim inside of the Beis HaMikdash. So that's number one. Number two, I'm only chayiv b'chutz if I perform a concluding avodah. But if I perform an intermediary avodah, then I am not chayiv for that. So for example, if I go and I take oil and I mix it with fine flour of a mincha outside of the Beis HaMikdash, I will not be chayiv for that. Why? Because that is an intermediary avodah and not a concluding avodah. Good. So the Gemara goes weiter. So once I say now, we're going to get into a little bit regarding the history lesson of the Mishnah. Just remember again, the Mishnah gave me the exceptionally fascinating historical rundown as to when bamos were permitted, when bamos were prohibited. The basic story being that whenever the Mizbeach is in a quote-unquote permanent location, so then all sacrificial service must be done on a centralized communal altar, and private Mizbechos, which we call bamos or bamos kitanos, are asur. Whenever the Mishkan is in a more temporary setting, so ultimately, good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld, welcome back. So ultimately, again, so bamos kitanos, individual altars are permitted. So the Gemara goes weiter. So achlo hukam Mishkan. So we'll say, here we go. Yosef. So we'll say now the other piece that the Mishnah also brought up, which was something quite interesting, which is that the first line of the Mishnah says achlo hukam Mishkan hayu abamos mutar. So we'll say before the Mishkan was established. Now this is in the desert. So before we even had a Mishkan, so what was the halacha? I was saying habamos mutaros. So private altars are permitted, and not only that, va'avoda bebechoros, and ultimately again avoda was done through the firstborns. So we'll say very important halacha. So number one, again, before the Mishkan is even erected to begin with, so bamos are permitted, and avoda is being done ultimately again by firstborns. So here we go. So says the Gemara. Yosef Rafuna bar Rav Katina kamid Rav Chisda. So it's actually quite interesting. So Rav Katina was sitting before Rav Chisda and he said as follows: Vika Kari, and he quoted the following passage. So we'll say now we're going to get into an interesting machlokas. Vayishlach es na'arei b'nei Yisrael. So we'll say, where is this pasuk from? So this is by Har Sinai. So the pasuk says Vayishlach es na'arei b'nei Yisrael vaya'alu olos vayizbechu Zevachim shlamim la'Hashem parim. So we'll say this is by Har Sinai. The pasuk says that Moshe Rabbeinu sent the young men of Bnei Yisrael to offer up karbanos. So we'll say, what's the obvious shayla? The obvious shayla is, who are the young men? Says the Gemara, Amrali Hachi Amravasi Karvo Pasku. We'll say these young men ultimately, says the Gemara, were who? Were the Bechorim. Right? These ultimately, again, these were the firstborns. So what's the halacha saying? So the firstborns went ahead and did the avodah by Har Sinai, but after they did the avodah by Har Sinai, that was it. Karva pasku. They did the avodah and then they were done. Look at Rashi. Amrali Ravhuna Hakim Ravasi pasku. Osu hayom pas kavodah min bechoros. So we'll say, so Ravhuna says in Ravasi that the bechoros did the avodah that day of Har Sinai. But from that day and on, they stopped. Shemisina nitztavu ala kahuna kedilaf lekaman v'shimshu nadav v'aviu kol osa shana rishona At shehokam hamishkan umeis. So it's actually quite amazing. So remember again, so Rav Huna Barav Katina is sitting before Rav Chisda, and he said as follows. Rav Asi said that at Har Sinai the Bechoros did the avoda, but from Har Sinai and on it was over with the Bechoros. Nadav and Avihu took over until the Kohanim were officially inducted by the Hakamas HaMishkan. Savra la'osvei mimas nisin. So he was going to refute this statement from a Mishnah. Shamei de ka'amar mishrei d'Ravad Barava. Then he heard him make another statement in Ravad Barava. What was the other statement? Ola she'krivu yisra b'midbar eina tuna hefshet finituach. Well, so then he made another statement. What was the other statement? That the ola which was offered up in the midbar did not require skinning and quartering, cutting into pieces. So we'll say normally an ola requires that you have to remove the hide, and you also cut the animal up into pieces. The second statement he made is that when the ola was offered up in the desert, it did not require removal of the hide or the cutting up into pieces. Osvei braisa de shavye bekula. So then he was going to answer him up. He was going to contradict him from a braisa, which I will say refuted both points. So let's remember again, 2 points were made and 2 points are going to be refuted. Point number 1 was what? That the avoda was done by the Bechoros at Har Sinai, but that was it. That was the last time the Bechoros did the avoda was at Har Sinai. From that point and on, it was not Daven Avihu. That was point number 1. Point number 2 is that when the olah was offered, when olos were offered up in the desert, so ultimately again they did not require hefshit and ituach. They did not require removal of the hide as well as cutting into parts. So it says the Gemara. So now what's the refutation on both of those points? So here we go. So we'll say, so number 1, this Sanya, Ad Shelo Hukam HaMishkan, we learned in the Bryce, which also happens to be our Mishnah as well. Ad Shelo Hukam HaMishkan, Habamos Mutaros. We'll say up until the point that the Mishkan was erected. So number one, Bamos, private altars were permitted. Number 2, Va'avoda bebechoros. The avoda was done by the firstborns. Now, both say, now understand what that means. That refutes what we just said before. What did Ravidi just say before? So Ravidi said, or actually Ravasi said, that what? That halacha l'maisa, the bechoros only did the avoda when? On the day of Har Sinai, and from that point and on, the avoda was done by Nadav and Avihu, then ultimately by the Kohanim. The Brisa clearly contradicts that, which is our Mishnah as well. Clearly contradicts that and says, no, the avoda was done by the firstborns until when? Until the Mishkan itself was put up. Furthermore, v'akol kshein lahakriv, behema, chayra, and we'll say, and all animals are fit to be sacrificed. Behema, chaya, oaf. So we'll say, so behema means domesticated animals, chaya is not domesticated animals, birds, zucharim in the kavos, male animals, female animals, tamimin or ba'ali mumin. We'll say ultimately again, whole animals, blemished animals, tahorin, avalot tamei. The only qualification we'll say is that what? It has to be of kosher species of animals and not ultimately again tamei. First white line, kuf tes vav amud beis. Va'kol karvu olos, and we'll say in the desert, all animals which were offered up as olos. Va'olos shekrivi yisaba midbar tu'una hefshet v'nituach. And when the olah was offered up in the desert, it required the hide had to be removed and the animal had to be cut up into pieces. The nochrim bizman hazeh, Rasha and Lasos came, and Gentiles today could offer up karbanos in the same way. Now Rashi points out over here, Rasha and Lasos came. Rashi says to lo nesrel menabamos, which sounds like it will say that the Gentiles today are permitted to offer up karbanos even on bamos, even on private altars. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? You see a contradiction on 2 points, on the 2 major points. Number 1, that Ravasi said before. I keep saying Ravasi, but it's not Ravasi. Yeah, it is Ravasi. Ravasi is number 1, that the Bechoros only offered on the day of Sinaitic revelation at Har Sinai, but from that point on it was Nadav and Avihu and then the Kohanim. We see from the Brayos that that's not the case, that the Bechoros did the Avodah until the day that the Mishkan was erected. That's number 1. Number 2, Ravasi said before that what? The olos that were offered up in the desert did not require removal of the hide and cutting into pieces, yet the Brayos says they did. So we'll say, so Tanahi, the Gemara says, you're right, it's a machlokes Tanam. In other words, the machlokes Tanam, we'll say, leaving aside Ola for just a moment, we're going to see there's a machlokes Tanaim who did the avoda in the desert. This Sanya, because we're under the Brayso, the Gama Kohanim Hanigashim al Hashem Yiskadashu, The pasuk says that the Kohanim who come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu shall be sanctified. Shall be sanctified. So we'll say, remember again, this is by Matan Torah. So this is by Har Sinai. So the pasuk says, "V'gama kohanim hanigashim al Hashem yiskadashu pen yifrotz bahem Hashem." So it says, the Gemara says, even the kohanim who come close to the mountain have to be careful lest they die. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer, Zu Prishas Bechoros. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, kohanim in this context actually refers to who? Refers to the firstborns. Doesn't refer to the sons of Aaron, or Aaronish sons, I should say, but rather again it refers ultimately again to the Bechorim, to the Bechoros, and telling us that the Bechoros have to be careful where they go on the mountain as well. Rabbi Omer Zu Prishas Nadav Avihu. Rabbi says no. This refers ultimately again to the separation and designation of Nadav and Avihu. Rashi points out over here, Prishas Nadav Avihu, Kilomar lo nikru b'choros kohanim, ela mihen avakohanim and nigushim, she's haru kanli for shvosa. Actually quite amazing. See, if you notice this, by the way, it's easy to skip over this, but in fact, by Matan Torah, we refer to kohanim. The machlokes is, who are the kohanim referred to by Matan Torah? So Rishum and Karcha says it refers to the firstborns, the Bechoros, because at this point in time, historically, the Bechoros was going to be the Kohanim. So Rabbi says, no, it's already a reference to Nadav and Avihu. Hainu Dichsiv. So also listen to this. If you go with the idea that the Kohanim referenced over here, Nadav and Avihu, then it makes sense what it says later on. By the death of Nadav and Avihu, Hainu Dichsiv, Hu asher diber Hashem leimar, Bikravai Akadesh. So we'll say ultimately again, that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or that's why Moshe Rabbeinu, after the death of Nadav and Avihu, says to Aaron, this is what God meant when he said, I will be sanctified through those ultimately again who are closest to me. Because what is it a reference to? Rabbi saying, Gama Kohanim Hanigashim al Hashem Yiskadashu. Remember again, already by Matan Torah, there's a reference to the fact that Nadav and Avihu are Kiddoshim, are holy. Therefore, when they die, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Aaron, this is what God meant when he said, Bikrovai Akadesh. I will be sanctified by those who are holy. Where do we see reference that Nadav and Avihu were called holy? Oh, the Gama Kohanim Hanigashim al Hashem Yiskadashu. So in words, Elam Adamar Zuprishas Bechoros Heicher Remiza. According to the opinion who says, i.e. Rabbi Shmuel Silber who says that if the Gama Kohanim Hanigashim al Hashem Yiskadashu was not a reference to Nadav and Avihu, but rather again it's a reference to the general firstborns. So where do we see an allusion to the death of Nadav and Avihu? Because the pasuk says, I will become known there to Bnei Yisrael, v'nikdash bichvodi, and I'll be sanctified through my honor. Al tikri bichvodi, do not read the word as bichvodi, ella b'mechubadai, or b'mechubdai. By those ultimately again who give me honor, I will be sanctified through those who give me honor. Which means ultimately again that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be sanctified ultimately again by those who are holy. So the Gemara says, Davar zeh Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe that I will be sanctified through those who give me honor. V'lo yada ad shemesu b'nei Aaron. And Moshe did not understand the profundity or the meaning of this divine statement until the sons of Aaron died. Kevan shemesu b'nei Aaron, when the sons of Aaron died, Nadav and Avihu died, Amar lehem Aaron achi lo mesu banecha el lahakdish Moshe LaKadosh Baruch Hu. Your sons died only to give honor to the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The death of Nadav and Avihu served to sanctify the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How did the death of Nadav and Avihu sanctify HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because also the death of Nadav and Avihu showed people that even the holiest of individuals must take extreme care in ultimately again how they approach the Ribono Shel Olam. And if great tzaddikim like Nadav and Avihu ultimately again, when they don't follow the script exactly, unfortunately lose their lives, how much more so the rest of us must be careful when we approach the Kodesh, when we approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. An incredibly dramatic say, if simple people were to die in the service of God, so you would just say that simply because they're just not holy enough. Nadav and Avihu, who were considered Kiddushim, when they died in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu because they did something not in accordance with the law, whatever it was, ultimately, again, that highlights the Kedusha of the Ribbon Shalom. Kevan Shiyada Aaron, Shebanav Yidui Makom. But say when Aaron knew that his sons died because of their closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shasak Vikibal Schar. He was quiet, he didn't ask why, he didn't complain, he didn't cry, and he received schar because of his silence. Shene Emar, Vayidom Aaron. The pasuk says Aaron was silent. So we'll say ultimately again, Aaron's silence, the Gemara understands over here, is an acceptance of what happened to his sons. But why is he able to accept what happened to his sons? Because Moshe Rabbeinu explains that their fate, their premature death, was a manifestation of their heightened holiness, their heightened level of Kedusha, and that's simply, again, a manifestation ultimately of wrongful behavior. So V'chein b'Davidu Omer, so also I say again, just so you understand, this, we're going to get sidetracked with this a little bit, but understand what we're really focusing on, Rabbi say, is what? Who did the avoda in the desert before the Mishkan was erected? So now, say, for our purposes, what do we see? We see it's a machlokes. It's a machlokes. And ultimately, again, really a machlokes as to who the Kohanim referenced during Sinaitic revelation were. Were those the Bechorim? Were those Nadav and Avihu? Now, how you interpret Kohanim by Sinaitic revelation has a ripple effect for how you go ahead and interpret a whole variety of other psukim. But if you understand that the Kohanim ultimately, again, even if you understand the Kohanim are the Bechorim, ultimately, I will say, either way, what we begin to see is that the death of Nadav and Avihu is referenced earlier, either one time explicitly, or ultimately again a bit more nuanced, and Moshe Rabbeinu only understands the meaning of the divine statement after the death of Nadav and Avihu. Shneimar v'yidom Aaron v'chim b'Davidu Omer, Dom LaHashem v'yischolalo. But similarly, David HaMelech says, Dom LaHashem, ultimately again, be silent for God. V'yischolalo, v'yischolalo literally means, and long for him. But the Gemara darshans, Afa pisha map elocha chalolim at shtok. Even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say literally again, map elocha chalolim means causes people to die all around you, you have to be silent. As we'll say, what David HaMelech is teaching us is the need to have personal strength and be able to accept the ratzon of Hashem, the will of God, even if that will of God is exceptionally difficult. V'chei b'shlomahu omer, eis lachshos ve'eis ledaber. And even Shlomo Melech says there's a time to be silent and there's a time to speak. There are times when you have to be silent and you receive schar for your silence. And there are times to speak and ultimately again receive schar, ultimately again for one's speech. So you see again by Aaron, by David, by Shlomo, this idea that sometimes again there is great schar to be received for the silent acceptance of the Ratzon Habore. That even when HaKadosh Baruch Hu does difficult things, the ability to silently accept the Ratzon Hashem is an incredible spiritual accomplishment. V'hada Amr Rabbi Bar Abba Amr Rabbi Yochanan Ma'id Chsiv Nora Elokim Mimikdashecha. So we'll say, what's the meaning of the pasuk in Tehillim? Literally again, Nora Elokim Mikdashecha. Awesome is God from His Mikdash. So Al Tikri Mimikdashecha Ela Mimkadashecha. Don't read it ultimately again from His Mikdash, but rather again read it. God is great from those who sanctify Him. B'shah sha'osa HaKadosh Baruch Hu din b'kedoshav, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and metes out judgment with those or through those who are holiest and closest to Him, misyare u'mis'ala u'mis'hala. So sometimes again, the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is most amplified when He goes ahead and carries out justice through those ultimately again who are closest to Him. So there's a twofold lesson that's learned from that. Number one, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu carries out divine justice through those who are closest to Him, it shows the need to be so meticulous and so careful in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that even those who are closest to Rabosai have to walk that very straight line of care and concern in their relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But also more than that, Rabosai, when He does judgment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu carries out judgment to those who are closest to Him. What it also does is, and they accept that judgment without complaint. They accept that judgment as Vayidam Aaron, Dom Vischalal, Eis Lachshos. they accept it with silence. They accept the Ratzon HaBorei that teaches us. As I say, it's such an incredible yisod. It's often interesting to see sometimes in life when things don't go our way, suddenly we're filled with all types of theological crises. Right? Things didn't go my way in life, and suddenly again, where is God? Where is God? What's happening with Chosh Baruch Hu? And you see again these great people like Aaron, like Moshe, like David, like Shlomo, who suffer incredible adversity, and what's their reaction? Acceptance. They accept the Ratzon HaBorei. Elakashya. So we'll say, so therefore again, Elakashya Ola. So we'll say, so now what we see is, who did the avoda ultimately again in the desert? Who did the avoda? Machlokes Tanoim. So remember again, obviously once the Mishkan is erected, then we explicitly know who's doing the avoda, that's the Kohanim. Who's doing the avoda until the Mishkan is erected? That's a Machlokes Tanoim. One opinion says ultimately again it was the Bechoros, it was ultimately the firstborn. Second opinion says the Bechoros, the firstborns, only did the avoda one day, which were the Karbanos, ultimately again by Sinaitic revelation. From that point in time, Nadav and Avihu took over. So it's a fundamental machlokes who is doing the avoda. So either Bechorim up until the Mishkan, or again Nadav and Avihu already up until Bechorim do one day, Nadav and Avihu take over the rest of the time. The rest of the Kohanim join them by that Kamas HaMishkan. Ella Kashya Ola. Rabbi said, but we still have an issue with Ola. Remember, what was our issue with Ola? So two different opinions. Ravasi said that Olos that were offered in the desert were not skinned and were not cut up into pieces. Yet the Brisa said that they were. Trei Tanoi. We'll say ultimately again two different Tanoim. This sign Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Klalos Nemru B'Sinai Upratos B'Oel Moed. Rabbi Shmuel says, Rabbi said that's what the general principles of law were said by Har Sinai, but the details were then clarified in the Mishkan. So Rabbi said, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Klalos Upratos Nemru B'Sinai. So Rabbi Kiva says no. Both the principles and the details were said over in Sinai. V'nishnu ba'ol moed were then reviewed ultimately again in the Ol Moed in the Mishkan. V'nishtal shu ba'arvos Moav, and were reviewed again in the Transjordanian land. So we'll say, so what does this mean? So according to Rabbi Yishmael, only the details were given at Har Sinai, the general details. So we'll say because of that, they offered up olos, but the details like skinning olos, cutting them up into pieces, were not given till later on. Therefore, the olos that were offered in the desert, many of them were not skinned and were not cut up into pieces. According to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi was saying, not only were the general principles, all the details were given at Har Sinai, which means what? That when it came to olos, Rabbi was saying, even again, they were skinned and they were cut up into pieces, even from the beginning. So we have to stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem with the rest of this Gemara tomorrow.